Hi everybody, it's Roz here. I hope that everyone's doing well at home, that you're keeping up with your yoga practice. If you're not, that's completely fine. The purpose of this class is just as a guide. If if you do want to develop and cultivate a yoga practice at home, hopefully I'll be seeing your faces on the mats really soon. So for this session, I thought that we could explore hip openers. So I've tailored a little hip opener sequence that will get you to prepare and work towards a pose called Ekapada Shirshasana, which is quite an advanced hip opening pose. It translates to leg behind the head. So we are going to try that, all right? Obviously, in the journey to find openness in the body and strength in the body, it takes a long time. It's not a one-stop shop. You're not going to get onto the mat and immediately be able to bust out a pose within, I don't know, 2 weeks of discovering yoga. We tend to talk about the practice in terms of decades, and that is how long it takes for some of us to develop and more strength and flexibility. So approach this sequence or approach this practice with a lot of love, kindness, and compassion for yourself and your body. All right, at the end of the day, it's just a little bit of fun. Okay, so hip openers, we tend to hear that quite a lot in our yoga classes. As we go along in the sequence, I hope to point out some of the different range of movements that your hips can offer. All right, so let's start in we'll start in our tabletop position. So coming onto your hands and your knees, you're going to spread your fingers on the mat. Get those shoulders stacked directly above the wrists. And then from there, get those hips stacked directly above the knees. Knees can be out at hip width apart. All right? So let's step a little further back. And then from there, I want you to start to engage your pelvic floor. See if you can lift your pelvic floor up. And then pressing your palms into the mat. See if you can start to engage those upper arms and those shoulders. Yeah, so we're waking that shoulder girdle up. You're going to press your palms into the ground. See if you can push through those shoulders, widening your scapulars towards the ceiling. So it's as though you're trying to lift that upper back towards the ceiling in your tabletop. Good. And you do want a strong core for your hip openers. It's not just all about flexibility. You do need the strength in your muscles, in your tendons, in order to support that openness as well. All right? So here for 5 breaths, you can start to use your Ujjayi breathing, breath at the back of the throat. We're here for 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Keeping your hips exactly where they are, stacked above the knees. We're going to start to walk our hands forwards, all the way transitioning into our puppy pose. Now, for some of you, if you work with sore wrists, you should probably start using puppy pose more in your vinyasa flows rather than your downward dog as you start to build that strength up in your downward dog. So this is just a great alternate pose to your downward dog. All right? So keep lifting those sit bones up as you stretch those arms forwards. If possible, your forehead goes onto the mat. Or if you're feeling quite a bit of pressure down that neck, you might just want to let your head just hang where it may. And start to tune that focus inwards. Start to draw that awareness to the body, cultivating that mind-body connection. 3 more breaths. 3,
4, and 5. And then we're slowly starting to walk our hands back as we inhale. Get those wrists directly underneath the shoulders once again. You're going to curl your toes under and lift up into your downward dog. All right. And you can start to warm the body at this stage. Just start to pedal your feet, bending one knee and then the other. All right. You can sway your hips gently from side to side if you wish, coming up high onto the balls of your feet and then lengthening your heels towards the ground once again. And then with each inhale and with each exhale, just slowly settling into the pose and find stillness. So setting your downward dog up, your hands are your shoulder width apart. Fingers are spread on the mat. See if you can press down onto the pads of your palms, lifting from the center of your palms. That's your Hasta Bandha. Drawing your upper arms up, shoulder blades back towards your sit bones. Good. And then see if you can press your thigh bones back, engaging the quadriceps. Your gaze is towards that center point between your feet, or you may gaze at your navel instead. All right. 5 more breaths here. 1, 2. Feel your ribcage expand as you inhale. Feel sit bones moving towards the back as you exhale. 3, 4, and 5. Pitching those shoulders forwards, get them directly above the wrists. So you might want to adjust the stance, the length of your plank. Shoulders directly above the wrist. Keep your shoulders exactly where they are, but start to lengthen your heels back. So by doing that, you're activating those thigh muscles, those quadriceps, and the body stays nice and strong in this pose, drawing your navel up towards the spine. And we're here for 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Moving sit bones back into your downward dog. And taking a rest here in your child's pose. So we're going to go with a closed knee child's pose. We're going to squeeze our knees and thighs close together. And this is just one of the range of movement in your hips. This is the flexion of your hips. You're going to just lower your belly onto your thighs. Arms are by your sides, palms facing up. And forehead goes onto the mat or onto stacked fists if there's too much pressure in the neck. And just letting that breath lengthen out, deepen it out. Creating space in the body. In and out, long and deep. 3, 4, and 5. From here, start to flow those arms forwards, walk those hands forwards, and let's transition back into our downward dog. Curl those toes under, lift those sit bones up. We're going to gaze forwards, draw that right knee in towards the chest, and then just step the foot in between the hands as we ground that back foot onto the mat. We are going to move into an extended side angle or Parshvakonasana. So placing that right forearm onto that right thigh as we bring that left arm up and over the head. Now as you do this, that left rib may want to pop out. Don't let it pop out, rather draw it down. Good. And we're bringing our gaze, our drishti, towards your left fingers. Staying here, nice strong pose, engaging both legs, That right femur bone, draw it deep into that hip socket. 3, 4, and 5. Good. Bringing arms out to the sides, coming into your warrior 2.
And then from here, just encouraging that right hip to open. We're going to leave that foot exactly where it is. Yeah, plant it firmly onto your mat, but you're going to track that right knee slightly to the right. You should be able to peek at that right big toe. Good. Tailbone is neutral. Your gaze is just down that right arm, past that right middle finger. Here for a few breaths, just to warm that body up. 3, 4, and 5. Windmill your hands, bring your arms down to the ground. Step that right foot back into your plank. And you can take a vinyasa flow, chaturanga, upward dog, and downward dog. Taking a moment here, breathing in, and breathing out. Onto the left side. So we're going to draw that left knee in towards the chest and then step that foot in between the hands, grounding that back foot to the mat. And from here, we're going to work our way into our extended side angle. So left forearm goes onto that left thigh. We're going to bring that right arm up and over the head. So just going to move that way so you can see what I'm doing. Extended side angle on the left side. And once again, for some of you, that right rib, it wants to pop out. Don't let it pop out. You're going to draw it down. And that helps to stabilize the core, helps to keep the center of the midline of the body strong and stable. 3. That gaze is up towards those right fingers. 4. And 5. Bringing arms out to the sides, coming into your warrior 2. And once again, keeping that left foot planted firmly into the mat. But what you want to do is to track that left knee slightly to the left. You should be able to peek at your left big toe. Gazing, your drishti is past that left middle finger. 3, 4, and 5. We're going to windmill our arms, bring our palms down to the ground, step that left foot back into your plank. Bring those shoulders forwards, chaturanga, upward dog, and downward dog. And breathing here. A few breaths. Now, from here, moving into our pigeon pose, we are going to bring our gaze forwards towards that center point between your hands, and then just step that right foot forwards, placing that knee, that right knee behind that right wrist. And then just staying here, you're going to see if you can scoot, come up onto the top of that back foot, and see if you can scoot it a little further back. All right? Depending on how you are feeling today, what you've been up to, how you slept last night, what you've been eating, your body will feel very different. The body constantly changes from day to day, moment to moment. So if your hips are feeling quite tight today, you'll find that for some of you, your pigeon might look like this with that knee joint closed. Completely fine, all right? And if that's you, just coming onto your fingertips, and just settling into those hips. And breathing here. If you're finding that you can sink that right hip a little deeper into the mat, that it's slowly starting to open, you might want to try just holding on to that right foot and bring it up the mat so that that shin is parallel to the top of your mat. All right. Now, when that happens, that left hip is going to want to pop up. So you can guide it slowly down with that left hand. Try to get those hips balanced, all right? Try to get those hips level to each other. Now, only do this, guys, if there's no pain in that knee. So if there's pain in that knee, you want to keep that knee joint nice and closed, all right? Otherwise, coming here, you can be on your fingertips, on your palms. Or for some of you, if you want to go a little deeper, coming down onto your forearms. Or into a full forward fold, only if it's available to you. Forehead goes onto the mat. And staying here with the breath. And as you stay here, just bringing an awareness to that deep inner feeling within your hip joint. All right? So understanding that with flexibility, not just hip flexibility, but any sort of flexibility, it is influenced by two factors, which is pretty much how tight or flexible your muscles, your tendons, your fascia is. And this flexibility or this tightness can be worked on over time with a yoga practice, a Pilates practice, stretching. Yeah, so there is room for space. There's room to improve in terms of flexibility. But the other factor that we need to be aware of as well is the skeletal the skeletal difference from body to body. Yeah, everyone's body is different. All right. So when it is skeletal and there's bone on bone, there's very little. This is the ultimate limit that you can move. Bone cannot move past bone. So that's something to consider as well. All right. All is well. All is good. There is no bad bodies or good bodies. Just cultivating kindness, patience, and tolerance towards your body. All right. So we're in our pigeon pose. As you take your next inhale, coming back onto your hands. And then from there, we're going to curl our toes under, our back toes under. We're going to move back into our downward dog. You want to move quite slowly at this stage, being very gentle with the body. And we're going to go on to the left side, bringing your gaze forwards. And then from there, drawing that knee forwards, placing that foot behind the right wrist. That left knee goes behind that left wrist. And that back foot, you're going to come onto the top of that foot and see if you can scoot that leg a little further back. All right? So once again, for some of you, if your hips are feeling quite tight, your pigeon might just end up looking like that. And that's completely fine. You might be propped up onto your fingertips, and that's all good as well. All right? Otherwise, if while you're in this pigeon, you can feel some room for opening there, you can help to guide that foot forwards. Get that shin parallel to the top of your mat. And as you do this, you can see that that right hip wants to pop up. You can use your right hand to gently guide it back down. All right, keeping those hips level with each other. From here, coming into your hands, staying here with an open heart, open chest, or you can come down onto your forearms, or if you wish, coming into a full forward fold. And we're breathing. 1, 2, 3, letting that awareness drop deep into that left hip joint. 4, connecting with the pelvic floor, see if you can lift it up. And 5. And then from there, walking your hands back, coming up into your palms if you're not already there. We're going to curl our back toes under and start to make our way slowly, gently back into our downward dog. All right. So we're ready to go a little deeper. Those hips might be feeling a little bit more open. You're going to gaze forwards. Start bending those knees. Get some buoyancy into those hips. Just hopping forwards, coming into Dandasana. Your seated fold. All right. Or your staff pose. So this is the base pose for all your seated poses. All right. You want to be high on your sit bones. Your knees can be slightly bent if you wish, but what I want you guys to focus on is to dorsiflex your feet, yeah, meaning pointing your toes up or in towards you. All right. And then from there, just engaging your quadriceps by lifting those kneecaps up, draw that navel in, and then see if you can lift that lower spine out of the pelvis. And as you do this, there's always that tendency for shoulders to start squeezing up to the ears. So relaxing those shoulders. Good. And then from here, I want us to move into a seated pigeon. Yeah, so a variation of pigeon. We are just going to bend that left knee. We'll start on the right side first. And then just crossing that right foot, placing it above that left knee. Okay. And when this happens, there's a tendency for that back to start to round. Yeah, for some stability, for some strength to be lost when this happens, all right? So you want to initiate the integrity of the pose by lifting that lower back up, drawing that lower belly in towards the spine, all right? And we're just holding here for 5 breaths. 3, 4, and you really can adjust this pose to where your body is at the moment. So if your hips are feeling a little tighter, you can scoot that left foot forwards. So it's not so deep a hip opener, all right? Or if your hips are feeling quite loosey-goosey today, quite open, you can bring that foot closer in towards the sit bones, all right? All right, 2 more breaths. Now staying here, high on your sit bones, keep lifting that lumbar spine, that lower spine out of the pelvis. Keep drawing that lower belly in towards the spine. Staying here, or if you want to go a little deeper, then we can do that, all right? You're going to start to lift that shin in towards the chest. Extend that left leg back out onto the mat. And then see if you can nestle that right foot into the crook of that left arm, all right? And then just wrapping that right arm around. And we work towards getting that shin parallel to the ground. And just hugging your leg here like a baby. And you can slowly, gently rock it back and forth, side to side if you wish. And as you do this, just letting that awareness drop into that hip socket, feeling the range of movement, the range of motion in your hips, sort of like a joystick, yeah? And then once you're there, just settling back to center, here for 5 breaths. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, staying here. Otherwise, we are going to get a little deeper if you wish, if you have room and space, okay? So from there, you can place your hands underneath that right leg and then see if you can guide that foot in towards the forehead, all right? So once again, bringing the awareness not so much towards the foot, but towards what's happening here within the hip socket, all right? And if it goes to the forehead, see if you can go a little deeper. All right, so I'm gonna move that way. And bringing that foot to the ear. So we're not bringing the head to the foot, but rather foot to the head. We're doing lots of social connecting these days, so maybe you might want to Pick up the phone. Call a loved one. 3, 4, and 5. And just releasing. Back down. All right. Give those legs, those thighs, a little bit of a wiggle. All right. And onto the left side. So you're going to start to bend that right knee. Bend that left knee now. Bring the left foot onto or right above that right knee. Just crossing there. Just placing it above the knee, never on the knee joint. All right. And again, just adjusting this pose to what your body needs. One side always feels a little bit tighter than the other. For me, my left side tends to be more open than my right. Right side is always a little bit stronger if you are right-handed. So that would be your dominant side. All right. Doesn't necessarily apply to everyone, but generally, that's just how it is. Okay, so let's adjust this pose. So if your hips, again, are feeling quite tight, your left hip is feeling like there's less of a range of movement there, you might want to just slide that right foot forwards and just stay here, completely fine. Otherwise, if you're finding that there's a lot of space to work with, you might want to draw or slide that foot closer in towards that right sit bone. Okay? And just staying here in your seated pigeon variation for 1, 2, keep lifting that lower spine out of the pelvis. 3, shoulders are relaxed. 4, keep lifting from the sternum, from that heart center. And 5. All right. And if we're there, you can stay here if you want to go a little deeper. We're going to start to extend that right leg back out onto the mat. We're going to start to nestle the sole of that left foot into that right arm. Okay? And then just wrap that left arm around that leg. Work towards bringing that shin parallel to the ground. And just staying here and get some movement into that hip joint. You can start to rock gently side to side, back and forth if you wish. And once again, bringing the attention perhaps less on that foot, but more towards what's happening in there in your hip joint. All right? Okay. And once again, staying with the breath. Keeping it long and smooth and deep. At no point should you hold your breath, even when things start to feel a little harder, a little tighter. All right. Staying here if you wish, or if you feel you've got a little bit more room to give, a little bit more openness, you can start to bring your hands underneath that foot and bring that foot towards your forehead. All right? And at no point should this happen. At no point should your spine start to slouch. Rather, we're maintaining the integrity of that pose. And then from there, see if you can just slide that foot out to the side. Knee goes opening out to the side. We're making that phone call. All right. So again, guys, never head to the ear. All right, we're not brute forcing our way into this pose, but rather, as there is space to work with, we are taking a hold of that space and just moving in a mindful way, in a deliberate way, placing that foot on your ear, if you wish. All right, 3, 4, and 5. You've told your loved ones you love them. You've said hello, goodbye. We're putting the phone down and back to Dandasana. Okay. Give those legs a little bit of a wiggle. Okay. Now, those hips are nice and open. That core is warmed up. We are going to attempt leg behind the head. Ekapada Shirshasana. Just before we do that though, with hips, hip openers, leg behind the head, for example, they can seem quite daunting. Oftentimes, working with the hips brings about intense feelings, both physically and emotionally. It can open a well of emotions. Yogis tend to say that we store our emotions in our hips, and you know, as we work with opening those hips, it can sometimes act as Pandora's box or what have you. I think the key to all of it is just approaching it with a lot of patience and tolerance to the process. Yeah, we stay the course, keep to the process. There is no fast solution to an open body, an open heart. It just takes time and practice. All right? So, having said that, we are going to come and lie on our backs on the mat. And just back of the head resting comfortably on the ground. You're going to place the soles of your feet on the mat. And then from there, you're going to start to lift your hips off of the mat, tuck your tailbone slightly under, and place it back onto the mat. So your sacrum, that flat piece of bone in your lower back, is resting comfortably on the ground. Just going to scoot myself a little further down. Okay. And once again, onto the right side. So we are going to work now with a reclining pigeon pose. All right, just yet another variation of your pigeon pose. I actually find this one of the most gentlest variation of pigeons. You get all the benefit of your pigeon pose. So if you are working with a knee injury or a hip injury, if there's pain or tightness in both those areas, do a reclining pigeon pose. Completely fine. You get all the same benefits. All right? So once again, bending that right knee and bringing that foot just above that left knee. And you can stay here. And actually, we'll all stay here for a little bit. Stay with the breath. Now, keeping your foot exactly where it is, I want you to start to bring or apply some pressure to that right knee without the use of hands. We're just going to start to open that knee a little out to the side and just being quite mindful of the movement within that right hip joint. All right. And then from there, you can start to bring your legs close in towards the chest and wrap your fingers behind that left thigh or holding onto the knee if you wish. You can wrap your arms around your legs if you wish. But for now, I'll just interlace my fingers behind that left thigh and work towards bringing that right shin close in towards the chest. All right. Here for 5 breaths. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then we are going to play around with that foot once again. So we're going to slide, perhaps bring our hands underneath that right leg. So just placing it on the calf. We're going to place that left foot back onto the mat. And then see if you can start to bring that right foot close into the forehead. Okay? And if that openness is there in your right hip joint, we can go a little deeper. You know that phone call? We're going to start making that phone call once again. Maybe someone else. Call your best friend. Call that lovely lady in that cafe just down the road, the one that makes all your coffee. All right. And then from there, see if you can bring foot to the ear. Okay? And if that all feels quite comfortable at this stage, that hip is all nice and open, we've already warmed that hip joint up plenty, we're going to see if we can start to slide or bring that right shoulder a little bit forwards and start to wiggle. Yeah?
Start to wiggle that shoulder forwards as we bring that shin behind the head. Deliberate movements to adjust yourself in this pose. And we'll stay here for 5 breaths. If possible, hands to prayer position at the heart. 1, 2, 3. And engaging that lower belly, draw it in towards the spine. 4. And 5. And then very gently taking that foot from under the neck, placing that foot back on the mat. A few breaths here. And we have the left side to work on. So, once again, sole of the right foot is on the mat. You're going to bend that left knee and bring that left foot on top of that right knee. Okay? So this is your reclining pigeon variation. Staying here, or you can start to bring both legs close in towards the body, interlace your fingers behind that right thigh. And once again, always the option to just hold onto the knee. You can wrap your arms around your legs, whatever feels good to you. I'm just going to interlace my fingers behind that right thigh. If possible, keep drawing those legs closer in towards the chest. Good. And breathing here, 1, 2, 3. Never fearing what's to come. Just approaching it with an open heart. 4. And 5. Stopping if you need to. Otherwise, unraveling those legs. We're going to start to bring, you can place your hands underneath that calf. You can start to bring that left foot in towards the forehead. Okay? And at this point, there should be no pain at all. Just openness, more space. With each inhale, just bringing that awareness, creating more space in that hip joint. And with each exhale, see if you can draw that foot closer in towards the face. And if possible, making that phone call. Sole of the foot towards left ear this time. And at this point, you might want to stop, or if you want to go a little deeper, those hips are feeling really nice and open at this stage. Those pigeons, those pigeons want to play with you. All right, we are going to start to bring that left shoulder forwards. And slowly, slowly start to wiggle that shoulder forwards, bring that leg back. Deliberate, mindful movements, safe movements to bring that foot comfortably nestled behind the head. Hands to prayer position at the heart, Anjali Mudra. 1, 2, draw that low belly in towards the spine. 3, 4, and 5. And very gently, bringing that foot back out from under the head, placing the sole of that foot onto the mat. For some of you, if you wish, moving into Supta Baddha Konasana, just letting knees fall out to the sides. And then just opening the body up to the sensations that you're feeling within the hips at this stage. And the breath. Feeling that space as you inhale, feeling that openness in your hip joints, and the groundedness as you exhale. And when you're ready, just crossing your shins and hugging yourselves at your shins, and start to rock gently back and forth. Give the spine a little bit of a massage. And we're coming up to seated. All right. So there you have it, leg behind the head, or Ekapada Shasana.
as I mentioned before, the journey of yoga, the journey of an asana practice takes a long time. But I think it's also mindful and good to remember that asana is simply one branch in your yoga practice. There are 8 limbs, Ashtanga yoga, so 8 limbs within the practice of yoga. All right, so strength and flexibility. One of the things my teacher liked to remind us is that with your yoga practice comes strength and flexibility. It's a long process, but it is coming. But it is also prudent to remember that strength and flexibility is only a symptom of the practice. It is not the practice itself. The breath is not the aim of the practice either. It is merely an anchor to the present moment. The practice is finding that middle ground between effort and surrender. Yeah. It is leaning into our discomforts even when we don't want to. It is recognizing the tight knots, not just in our joints, but the tight knots that we form in our minds. And, slowly and patiently unraveling, untying those knots. And it takes time, but the harder we yank it, the tighter those knots will form. So we slowly sit there, we dig deep, we do the work, we stay the course. And slowly and surely, those knots will come undone, and in place there is freedom. Namaste.